Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, we take a look at the prospects that were ranked in Baseball America's top 100 and talk a little bit about each one. And then we talk about the Angels and the dumpster fire of the organization they are based on how they treat their Spanish speaking broadcast. So that's what's on tap. So make sure to keep it Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is a daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. We are here every Monday through Friday, and you can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you're a fan, then make sure to subscribe and never miss a day because you know we're not going to. If this is your first time listening or watching, I'm Vince Samperio. I'm usually joined by co-host Jeff Snider, but Jeff needed me to go solo today, so that's what I'm doing. But we're both five-pound Dodger fans that have spent time covering the team, currently cover the team, press box, locker room, all over Dodger Stadium, writing about the team, talking about the team. And yeah, we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. And that's what I'm here to do today, talking about the Dodgers. No real news in Dodgers land. No real news. I guess Tommy Pham signed with the Mets and Adam Duvall signed with the Red Sox. That was the extent of any real news in baseball. Um, so yeah, nothing really too much on the Dodger front. I don't know. We're all kind of waiting to see what happens. They do kind of still need an outfielder and or another infielder, depending on how they are going to attack this. But we haven't heard anything. We don't know anything. And I don't know at this point. I'm not ready to concede that the roster they currently have is the one that they're gonna send out there when spring training gets here. But I don't know if they're gonna be able to bring anyone else in, or I don't know if they're gonna try to wait it. I think Andrew Friedman's probably weighing it right now. Of okay, if I wait this out, and let's say some of these young guys perform pretty well, Chris Taylor and Max Muncy get back to how they usually are, and we're fine, then they don't necessarily need to, bring anyone else in, or if they do, it's to reinforce. So then you can say, okay, is it worth it for us to trade prospects for, Corbin Burns or an outfielder or Shohei Ohtani, like we talked about yesterday? Or if, is the team good? We're going to make the playoffs, but, I don't know if it's worth investing, giving up prospects for somebody that would leave, whether it's a rental. If it's someone with years on, then yeah, obviously it makes more sense to do that, but it's going to cost more. So all in all, that's how it is. But when it comes down to the Dodgers this year, it's coming down to, we talked about a youth movement a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago, whatever it was now, and the Dodgers farm system is fairly stacked in terms of guys that are ready to come play, guys that are nearing ready to come play, and then guys that are still developing. And you look at their top 30 prospects, and there's a lot of names on there that you probably recognize as being a Dodger fan, and a lot of names that are now recognized by other publications because the Dodgers had 6 players on Baseball America's top 100 prospects list. 5 of the 6 were on the list last year, but all of them improved their ranking, and Gavin Stone made a huge dump. So we had Diego Cartaya ranked 18th overall. He was ranked 23rd last year. We have Bobby Miller ranked 21st overall. He was ranked 38th last year. Miguel Vargas ranked 30th. He was ranked 40th last year. Michael Busch ranked 54th. He was ranked 76th last year. Ryan Pepiot ranked 55th. He was 99th last year. And Gavin Stone up to 56 after not being ranked last year. So that's 6 in the top 56, more so than the top 100. And, these guys, for the most part, we're probably going to see at least 5 of those names this season coming up for the Dodgers. Cartaya, probably the one exception, unless he has some crazy development, and or the Dodgers need a catcher, something happens to Will Smith or whatever the case is. But, barring that, we're probably going to see the other five at some point this year. So we're just going to kind of go through and talk a little bit about them. And, we'll save Cartaya a little bit for the end just because, like I said, I don't expect to see him this year, but he does have obviously the highest upside probably of all these guys. We'll go to Bobby Miller, and Bobby Miller ranked 21st here, like I mentioned, ranked 38th last year. Wanted to mention that on MLB Pipeline, another prospect ranking spot, they're ranking top 10 like by position, and Bobby Miller was the number 6 overall right-handed pitching prospect, uh, behind guys like Grayson Rodriguez, Daniel Espino, Yuri Perez, Andrew Painter, and Taj Bradley. So he was number 6. Gavin Stone was number 10 on that list. So we'll talk about Gavin Stone a little bit. And with Bobby Miller, it's now a matter of him developing the rest, or not developing the rest of his stuff. His stuff is fairly developed. It's him becoming more efficient with his pitches. According to Baseball America, they said that Bobby Miller's 98 mile per hour average fastball was the highest among the 28 pitchers ranked in the top 100, and there was only, I think, one other pitcher that averaged over 96 miles an hour on their fastball in the top 100 in general. So this kid's fastball is different, and that's between the fastball and just kind of the general swagger we've seen from him. He rocks the chains. He's got the thick. He's 6'5", but he looks shorter because he's so thick. He's got a thick neck, thick legs. Which hopefully would serve him well because he's going to be, being a starting pitcher, you got to have, the big legs, and you got to be ready to go, and you got to have, the lower body in order to get you through a full season. So in that sense, he's good. But, even though he throws 90 miles an hour and he has these good off-speed pitches, his ERA last year in the minor leagues was 4.25. And yeah, that while that's not great, um, there's you can look at it a few different ways. So he had a 4.25 ERA overall. He had a 1.175 WHIP overall, which most elite pitchers are around one WHIP. Most good pitchers are around 1.0, maybe not 1.12 often. You might be getting a little bit lucky if you're in the 1.1 area. Where he struggled a little bit was walks. He did issue 37 walks in 112 innings, 37 walks in 24 games, 23 starts. So almost not quite walks per start, but his starts usually weren't that long. 23 starts, only 112 innings. So you can kind of add it up right there. He did have 145 strikeouts in those 112 innings, and that's where the magic kind of happens, and where you kind of see, okay, this kid could be good because he does have the strikeout stuff. He does have the off-speed pitches. He does have the fastball. He does have the mentality. He does have the swagger. He's just got to clean it up a little bit, and there's no reason to believe he's not going to clean it up a little bit. I mean, even just last year, very small sample size. He spent most of the year in Double A, and that's where he had a 4.45 ERA. Then when he moved up to Triple A, 4 starts, he had a 3.38 ERA, and that's in the PCL, which is usually a little bit more known for offense. So yeah, it's exciting for Bobby Miller, but it's one of those where we got to remember that a lot of things need to come together for a pitcher to be, a legitimate starting pitcher in the major leagues. And a lot of these top prospects, sometimes it either one takes them a while to get there, two, they never quite get there, maybe they become a reliever, or three, they do become a Walker. Walker Buehler came in and was the man. And he had the Tommy John surgery that delayed him a little bit. He came up late in the year in 2017, and then 2018, boom, he's in the rotation. 2018 World Series, he's dominating the Red Sox, the only really starter that dominated the Red Sox. And ever since then, we know the legend of Walker Buehler. Bobby Miller can be that type of guy, and he's a lot bigger. So not that Walker Buehler is not durable, but with Bobby Miller, like, that's a menacing presence, 6'5" on the mound, 220, a big, guy, big, strong guy. And it's exciting to think about him. And we talk about, are we going to see him this year? We're probably going to see him this year. I wouldn't expect to see him, making 20-25 starts. Obviously, I do believe 5 to 10 starts would be in the realms, probably starting, unless they have a lot of injuries early on, probably not until the second half of the season. Let him season a little bit in the minors and then come up and see what he can do and see if he can help out. And for this season, I don't expect him to necessarily, obviously, ideal world, he comes up, he's an amazing starter and he helps out the Dodgers. But I think where he can help the Dodgers this year is a little bit, is that reliever role down the stretch. He can get some spot starts down it, and then they, as they're starting to construct the playoff roster, then it's like, okay, this guy might be able to help us out in 1 or 2 inning spurts using that big fastball, using those off speed pitches. And that's what we really want to use them for. So I'm excited to potentially see that as the season goes on. So that's where we're at on Bobby Miller. Gonna run through the rest of these prospects. But first, want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen and talk about BetOnline, because today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline.net, which is your number one source for all your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to basketball to everything else going on. They've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. So head to betonline.net on your laptop or mobile device and learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we are back. Getting into the rest of these prospects, the next one comes Miguel Vargas. We've talked about Miguel Vargas a lot this offseason. There's probably not too much to hammer home. He's expected to be a somewhat everyday player for the Dodgers, whether it's third base, second base, left field, whatever the case. They're counting on him to be the hitter that he's shown himself to be so far in his minor league career, and they expect him to be. And honestly, he's probably one of the more pivotal players for the Dodgers this coming season, because for the most part, Mookie Betts, yeah, can you argue Mookie Betts is probably the most pivotal player for the Dodgers? Yeah, you can make that argument just because they need him to be Mookie Betts, but you're counting on him to do that. Freddie Freeman, same thing. You're counting on him to be Freddie Freeman. You know what you're going to get out of him. Will Smith, you're counting. You kind of know what you're going to get out of him at this point. Max Muncy, Chris Taylor can be considered pivotal, but it's mostly because they need to get back to what they were before, or what Max Muncy was in the second half, or at least the last few months of the season. So, but Miguel Vargas, if he can't hit or if he doesn't work out, that leaves a big hole for the Dodgers, because they were counting on him. They possibly didn't make moves this offseason because they wanted him to have a spot in the lineup. And we don't have any doubts other than just natural doubts that are you have with any prospect, but there's no doubt that Miguel Vargas will be able to hit. He seems to have that right mentality. He's been working out a lot with the Dodgers and the staff over the offseason. Reportedly, a few times I've seen it reported that he's been working out a lot at second base, so maybe that's what the Dodgers have in mind for him. Max Muncy will take the bulk of the starts at third base. Maybe they want to keep the outfield open for Chris Taylor or whoever else. And if he can man second base and if he can hit, that's a perfect execution and perfect spot for him, because if he's above average offensively and he's at second base, then now you have a premium position player at second base, because second base not really known for offense too much most of the time. So if he can be that guy, that helps out. Moving on to Sorry, lost my place. Moving on to Michael Busch. Michael Busch, another guy that honestly I have no idea what to expect heading into. Obviously, we've talked about Michael Busch a lot as a potential guy, whether off the bench or making spot starts, whatever the case is. And for me, I'm a little skeptical of Michael Busch, only in the sense that the Dodgers have had a few chances the last couple years. The big thing with Busch is that he can hit, and it's been a couple years now that the reports have been, oh, he can be a major league hitter. And maybe, maybe his defense, I don't know, is that bad, or maybe they don't trust it, or whatever the case is. But I feel like there was a couple of times in the last 2 years where the Dodgers could have used or given Michael Busch a shot and they didn't. And that's what leaves me a little bit skeptical is, okay, did they not trust the defense? Did they not want to use a roster spot? Do they not trust his offense? Like, why didn't he get that? Why didn't he, make that jump to the majors? Because for Bush, he's already a little bit older. He went to college. He's 25 years old. I mean, he's already. I mean, especially in today's age, he should be in the major leagues already. And the fact that he isn't leaves me a little skeptical. But if he can hit like he says, or like they say, I'm sure he can. I'm sure he says it as well. But if he can hit like they say and they believe, then yeah, that adds a big contributor to the Dodgers, but not so much in the starter role, maybe, but maybe coming off the bench. Right now, the bench, if Miguel Rojas is not the everyday starter at shortstop, then he's a good bench, solid bench piece. Austin Barnes, solid bench piece. But other than that, you're looking at guys that are unproven or unknown. One of them being James Outman or Trace Thompson, unless they're both playing outfield, then Chris Taylor's coming off the bench, or Miguel Vargas coming off the bench. There's a lot of different options. But if Michael Busch can be a guy that can hit, even if he doesn't have an everyday role, being able to hit off the bench is very key and clutch for the Dodgers. We've seen that spot come up for the Dodgers a few times in the last couple postseasons or regular seasons or whatever the case. And, sometimes they're sending guys. We've talked about Steven Souza Jr. and some of these guys, DJ Peters, who didn't quite work out, and Zach Rex, who didn't really work out. And, you know, I hope he's not one of those. I hope he ends up being a guy that can contribute, and I'm excited, looking forward to seeing him because I feel like I mentioned, I feel like he's been delayed, and I don't know why. And I hope it's not for the reasons. I hope it's just a matter of, what, it's not worth it for us to put him on the roster at this point in time because we're going to have a lot of movement coming around, up and down, and it's easier for us to DFA these random guys that are the 40th man on the roster than it is to have to option or consider, Michael Busch coming up and down, especially last year with the new option rule. Uh, that might have played a factor into it. So the next one is Ryan Pepiot. Ryan Pepiot went up to 55 from 99 last year. Pepiot is, you know, we know Ryan Pepiot. We've seen him pitch in the majors already. If he can figure out how to consistently throw strikes, he'll be at least a number 3 starter in the major leagues. And that's really good for the Dodgers because they don't necessarily need another number 1 or even a number 2. Obviously, it'd be ideal, and especially with Julio's contract, we don't know if he's going to be here after this season. And Walker Buehler, coming off his second Tommy John surgery, can't guarantee that he's going to be the same guy he was before. So if Ryan Pepiot can develop into something more than a number 3, then obviously the Dodgers will take that. But at the very least, I'd say his floor is a number 5 starter. His ceiling is a number 2 starter, and if he can settle somewhere right there in the middle, the Dodgers would be fine with that. And if he can consistently throw strikes, that changeup is nasty. We know the changeup is nasty. If he can figure out, you know, getting away, and I don't know if this is, we can't project what he was doing when he came up, but guys that come up from the minors, and if they have a pretty strong pitch, but it's used as a pitch that is meant for chasing, then you can maybe nibble a little bit, and major league players either will know if you're nibbling or are more likely to lay off some of that stuff than minor league players are. Just mentioned this part before. And then, instead of a swinging strike on a 2-2 changeup, it's now full count. And now you got more pressure to throw a strike. And, if you're in your head or a little bit or whatever the case, or you just mess up your mechanics just slightly and you throw a ball, and now you have a walk, and now there's another guy on base. So, Pepiot, we know what he is at this point in terms of his stuff. It's just a matter of, I don't think his stuff is going to make any big jump. His fastball is pretty good. His changeup's really good. If he can command that third pitch, then he can be a guy that can get you 2.5, 3 times through a lineup. And it's just a matter of throwing strikes consistently. And, obviously he probably will get a legitimate shot at, the starting rotation if he can somehow beat out Dustin May or Tony Gonsolin, which maybe not legitimate, but he'll have a chance. And if he'll definitely be probably the first guy called up after, if they need a 6 starter, if they need somebody because of injury or whatever the case is. So, this is the pivotal year for Ryan Pepiot, because if he doesn't kind of become that guy, then he kind of gets lost in the shuffle of who are you, what are you doing, and can you be that guy for us? And, that's not necessarily the place you always want to be in. We got two more prospects to get into, but just want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day, and remind you to check out Locked On MLB Prospects with host Lindsey Crosby for your second listen of the day. He's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. All right, last two guys. Gavin Stone, number 56, after not being ranked last year. He's also ranked number 10 by MLB Pipeline for top right-handed pitching prospects. And in that article about the top right-handed pitching prospects, they go through and they list the top 10, and then they go top tools. And uh, for I don't know, for whatever reason, the Espino got the top fastball. He got an 80 grade fastball. I'm sure Bobby Miller's probably right around there, but maybe I think Espino's has a little bit better spin rate, is what I can recall. But for changeup, there's three guys, and one of those guys is Gavin Stone. They have 70 grade changeup, which is, uh, pretty good and pretty solid in terms of the 2080 scale that Major League scouts and Major League and everybody uses. So Gavin Stone changeup. Lefties hit 216 off the changeup last year, so that's how he neutralizes lefties a little bit. And he's a guy that was the Dodgers fifth round pick, if I'm not mistaken, in 2020, and that draft was only 5 rounds, or no, maybe I'm getting them mixed up. But either way, Gavin Stone is a guy that wasn't expected to be a top tier prospect. He was a guy, yeah, fifth round of 2020 draft. I was right. So fifth round is still high, but in that year it was a little bit different year drafting because there was only 5 rounds, and you were taking guys that were more likely to sign probably than taking chances. Whatever the case is, he came out of University of Central Arkansas. He's also a little bit older in terms of prospect. He's 24 years old already, but he's developed very quickly. And you look at the numbers from last year. When you look at the numbers from 2021, and he had a 3.76 ERA in 22 or 23 games pitched, 22 starts, 91 innings. In those 91 innings, he had 138 strikeouts and 25 walks. So, a 1.231 whip. So, not great with the walks. Gave up a decent amount of hit, almost a hit an inning, and then at the walks on top of that. And then in 2022, he pitched across three. He went from the Great Lakes in high A to Tulsa in double A, and ended the season in Oklahoma City triple A. And over the entire season, he had a 1.48 ERA in 121 innings. He had 168 strikeouts in those 121 innings and a 1.118 whip, which is much better. He allowed less hits. His walks went up slightly compared to the year before, but he was able to allow less hits. So, he kind of found a balance, I guess. But you look across the three levels, and they're all fairly similar. He had a 1.16 ERA and 6 starts in AAA, a 1.60 ERA and 13 starts in AA, and a 1.44 ERA and 6 starts in high A. So it wasn't a matter of, okay, he dominated, 24 years old in high A, or 23 years old last year in high A. You might think, okay, he's older than everyone. But as he continued to climb the rankings, he continued to be very, very, very good. And for the Dodgers, Gavin Stone is a guy we don't know what his true ceiling could be because he's still kind of developing. Yeah, his changeup is really nasty. We know that. He's able to mix it up and get through and get strikeouts. But, we need to see, I guess, one more year of it, or not necessarily. We don't need to see one more year of it before he comes up, but we're going to see that this year. And he's going to be a guy that makes a major league start this year for the Dodgers, regardless of when or where. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen unless there's some miracle that the Dodgers, all their starters that are currently in the rotation, make 30 starts, which I don't see happening, and I don't see them allowing happen anyways. So we're going to see Gavin Stone this year. And for me, Gavin Stone's one of those where when you pick a guy, Bobby Miller, a top pick, your number one pick, not the number one pick, but your number one pick, then you probably hold on a little closer to the vest, and that's what you drafted him for. Gavin Stone, fifth round, is not quite a flyer, but like I said, in that draft, a little bit different the way teams were drafting. And for Gavin Stone, it's a matter of guys like in the past with, well, Jose De Leon and guys like that that developed, became top prospects. They were drafted, a little bit lower. Even Gonsolin and guys like that. Even Dustin May was a top 5 round, I believe. So not him per se, but I feel like you're playing with house money a little bit because they did develop and they are good, and it's obviously a credit to your development system and a credit to everything else, and probably the player, just growing up and buying in or whatever the case is. But I feel like if there's a trade to be done, or if the Dodgers are going to make a trade and it's a bigger trade, I feel like Gavin Stone is more likely to be traded just because, like I mentioned, you have less invested in him in general because he was a lower pick, and it's a little bit of house money. Like, oh, look at this lottery ticket I have is worth $10 to me, but I can trade it for something that's worth $50 to me right now. Maybe that $10 can be used to buy another lottery ticket, and that lottery ticket ends up winning $100, whatever the case. And that's what prospects are basically, is your their lottery tickets, and you're kind of hoping. The Dodgers have a little bit better track record of developing guys and knowing if you draft a guy, they're probably going to be good. But for every Bobby Miller or Will Smith at the end of the first round, there's Jaron Kendall. So there's not always going to work out. And for what I'm trying to say is Gavin Stone's more open to being traded if the Dodgers do make a trade, but I really hope they don't, because I want to see what he can do. Because if the Dodgers can, they'll have Gonsolin and they'll have May, and they've had Julio. We don't know after this year. They'll have Walker Buehler. They have Kershaw. They have homegrown talent in the rotation, and it's continued to churn out and churn out and churn out. And Ross Stripling, became a guy and became an all-star. Alex Wood wasn't homegrown, but they got him fairly young. He became an all-star. Tyler Anderson, not young at all, but we, started doing what the Dodgers asked. He became an all-star. Tony Gonsolin, he became an all-star. Could Gavin Stone be that next one in the realm where he kind of develops with the Dodgers, becomes an all-star pitcher, and then, kind of goes on from there. So that's it on the prospects. I know I was going to say that I was going to talk about Diego Cartaya, but we've talked about Diego Cartaya a lot. And like I said, I don't expect to see him this year in a prominent role. He's already on the 40-man roster, so there's possible we could see him at some point just in general, but I don't expect to. But real quick, I just want to talk kind of how we're spoiled as Dodger fans. There was an article in the Athletic yesterday written by Sam Blum, and talking about the Angels Spanish language broadcast. And honestly, I had no idea because I don't really watch Angel games, and if I or listen to Angel games, and if I did, it probably wouldn't be in Spanish just because I wouldn't listen to it anyways. The Angel Spanish broadcast in general is a mess. They don't have a full-time broadcast team for Spanish. They don't even have a booth in Angel Stadium. They don't. He didn't have a broadcast partner. He's not a full time employee. He gets. I think the number was $350 freelance per game. His producer gets $110 per game. And at one point, even without COVID, he was Jose Tolentino, I believe is his name. Yeah, Jose Tolentino. He was recording games, watching it at his house in a closet, and recording in a closet that was soundproofed for him to be able to work. Now, obviously, Dodger fans have been spoiled, especially Spanish-speaking Dodger fans, if you listen, because we've had Jaime Jarrín most of our whole lives. For people that listen to this, podcast, more than likely. And even though Jaime Jarrín's leaving, the Dodgers aren't just saying, "Okay, no more Spanish broadcast." They'll continue on. There's Fernando and Pepe Miguinez, and between radio and between TV, there's different guys they have. And it's just weird to me. Every couple of months, it seems like an article comes out about the Angels and about, their minor leaguers are treated bad. Now their broadcast team is, Spanish broadcast team is either non-existent, and if they are existent, they're not treated that well. This past season, 2022, Tolentino wasn't even invited to call games because they had someone that was on staff with whatever the radio station that's connected to the Angels, and basically they didn't want to pay Tolentino, so they had that guy call them, and he's not even a baseball broadcaster. He does more soccer. So this is not all to bash the Angels. This is just for us to appreciate, I know as Dodger fans, it wasn't the greatest offseason, depending on how you feel. Most people probably feel like, okay, we lost a lot of players that were some of our favorites. We didn't necessarily get any of the big free agents. You could conceivably say the Dodgers will be worse team than last year. Even though that's going to be hard every year when you win 111 games, it's going to be hard to be better the next year. But whatever the case is. But I think it's just a reminder that as bad as everything is, Artie Moreno is not the Dodgers owner, and it could be a lot worse. And appreciate that the Dodgers do care about their fans to a certain extent. Obviously everyone's going to feel different about ticket prices and beer prices and all that kind of stuff, and that's kind of comes with the territory. But for the most part, you think the Dodgers, they care about you. They have great broadcasting crews in English. They have great broadcasting crews in Spanish. Just in terms of going to Dodger games, they have the theme nights throughout the year for pretty much every race and ethnicity at this point. They make sure to engage those every type of fan, and the Angels haven't really done that. Especially for you to be a fan of the Angels that only speak Spanish, and for not every game to be broadcast in Spanish, is, especially in Southern California, is a travesty. It's a crime, and I hope for Angels' sake and for baseball's sake that the next owner for them is somebody that cares and reinvest back into the team, the community, the fans. Just like I said, I don't, Angel fans are kind of annoying, but I feel like they've been humbled the last few years, at least the ones that I know. And I don't feel, as angry toward them anymore, or like I don't have issues with them anymore. So I do hope that they can figure it out, because, it's already bad enough to get made fun of for having two of the best players to ever play baseball and not make the playoffs. And now that you see all these other stories that come out, and, they had the story of the trainer or whoever it was, supplying drugs, and the Tyler Skaggs incident and death and tragedy. So yeah, just I'm glad. Obviously, Jeff broke that news the other day of a Dodgers guy and the illegal betting ring, and we'll see if the Dodgers do anything, if they know about it or whatever the case. Blah blah blah. That's still a lot to go on, and that's something obviously that's not ideal, but uh, you know, if things go right, the Dodgers will handle that. And as we've seen with the Angels, they don't necessarily handle everything well. So, just be glad to be a Dodger fan, is long story short. That's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Check out Locked On MLB Prospects with host Lindsey Crosby, because he's a prospect encyclopedia and he's there for you every Monday through Friday as well. Uh, so go make that your second listen. You can find it wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube, which is how you can find us if you search Locked On Dodgers, which is also how you can find us if you're on Twitter and Instagram. You can find Jeff on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Samperio. The DMs are open on all those accounts if you need to get a hold of us. You can also get a hold of us via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car or if you're at home to your smart device play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.